Matthew Lee, Intercity Press, on behalf of the Free UN Coalition for Access. Thanks a lot for coming for this briefing. I want to sort of step back, having covered Burundi here in the Security Council for over the last couple of years. Do you feel, in the course of your work, do you feel, at one time it was said that 226 police were going to be sent. In fact, they even voted to send them. To my knowledge, none have been sent. If these days they rarely meet on it. There's a new special envoy named Michel Kafando. So as a factual question, have you met with him? What do you think of his work? Can it be helpful he's charged with his job with improving human rights in the country. I wanted to know, in the case of journalists like this, there's a very high-profile journalist that is still, I don't know if that's called an enforced disappearance or just Jean Bigirimana. Did you find anything about what happened to him, who's responsible for it? And then, even in terms of the amendments, you were saying it depends what's in them. I think that they're final. I think that the Council of Ministers has adopted them, and they're going to be put to a vote in February 2018, and they will allow Pierre Nkurunziza to stay in power at least until 2034. Basically result, and the Arusha process is not included in them because that would preclude that. So I guess I wanted, maybe you can more directly, the idea how much of this violence and state-sponsored militia is tied up in this what was the then contested question of the third term, and now turns out to seemingly be unlimited terms. And what does this say about the sort of the coordination between the Human Rights Council, commissions such as yours, the Security Council? Why is it that in this case nothing more was done? Thanks.
Actually, concerning actually the question of the amendment of the Constitution, and to complete a little bit the reply I gave to your colleague, I would say that if this amendment goes through, as far as the extension of the mandates, I would say that the same causes will give the same results. What prompted the demonstration of April 2015 might prompt other demonstrations in the future if this revision takes place effectively in early next year. Concerning now the question of our contacts with Michel Kafando, the special envoy of the Secretary General, we haven't yet had the chance to meet him. We were expecting to meet him here, but unfortunately he was not here. We met this morning with his new chief of cabinet, who is going to Bujumbura to take her office very soon. We wrote to Michel Kafando actually when he took function, but it was much too early for us to ask him anything. We just wanted to congratulate him and to say that we were looking forward to be working with him. Concerning now the question of the deployment of the 228 policemen by the Security Council, I don't think that this, officially I think this is always on the table, this is always on the agenda, but my personal feeling, and I don't know if my colleagues are sharing this feeling, is that I don't think that this is now really in the picture. In my view, this is more or less moot. This has not been any more mentioned by the Security Council or the President of the Security Council in his statements. The reason will be, which might be given, is that the situation is not as critical as it was in the past now to justify the deployment of these 228 policemen. I think now the crux of the matter is more the deployment of the African Union observers and military observers and human rights observers. I think this is where now the thrust is, and this is where maybe Michel Kafando can put the emphasis. And as far as you mentioned Michel Kafando, I think this is also, for me, the place to mention the importance of the political dialogue and the importance of the report of the Commission, which I mentioned is the report of the Commission is a bit bulky. We have published two reports actually, one report of 20 pages and one report of 200 pages, which contains all the conclusions and all the details, together with the testimonies of the 500 witnesses that we have met, without, of course, the information relating to the identity of those people. So this is a very important tool. The findings of the Commission are a very important tools and a very important leverage in order for the mediators, whoever they are, like Michel Kafando for the United Nations, like Mr. Nkapa for the the East African community to exert pressure on the government of Burundi to conduct an effective inter-Burundian dialogue in order to find a solution, a sustainable solution, an effective solution, and a sustainable solution to the political crisis, which is now in Burundi since 2015. Maybe I can give the floor to my colleagues, because maybe I missed some of your points. But
Bigirimana, but maybe you don't know where he is.
No, we don't have any news from him, sorry. Yeah, who disappeared in July 2016. We haven't got any news as far as his fate is concerned, nor did we get any news concerning other cases of disappearances.
My comments follow on from my colleagues. I'm really struck by the attitude of political bodies that first show an interest and then stop showing an interest. And the thing that I find odd is that even if they're less interested in the human rights situation, if I was sitting in either the Security Council or the relevant body in the case of the African Union, I would be outraged that no attention had been paid to a resolution we'd passed. So leaving aside the human rights dimension, the fact that this is a flagrant disregard of the view of a body to which the state belongs, I find that extraordinary. And I do think the deployments matter. They matter first as a signal, in that even if the numbers are really restricted, I think the knowledge that these people are wandering around and might ask questions could have a deterrent effect. And also we can add to that the failure to renew the MOU of the Office of the High Commissioner. And I think that that is a similar kind of problem, that it's being used, the presence of the Office of the High Commissioner is being used as a kind of leverage to gain other things or to lose other things. I mean, to some extent, one has got used to the idea that the Security Council in particular, but other human rights bodies, the decision as to how much attention they pay to a situation actually has not much to do with the gravity of the situation. It helps, as far as the states are concerned, if things are kept hidden. Where the situation is very publicly visible, it becomes more difficult for the state to actually ensure that nothing effective is done. And it could well be that since 2015, the Burundian authorities have learnt a lesson, that when the crisis erupted, and I think that's the right word, you don't get the sense of there being any systematic plan. It was simply the police were confronted with demonstrations, they reacted with excessive use of force and so on. It's traditional law enforcement. Since then, seeing that the way forward is not to have large numbers of bodies on the roads, because in that case that attracts the attention of the AU and of the Security Council, but you can achieve it by doing it furtively. So you make sure that people are taken when there aren't witnesses to see them being taken, that if they are killed, you dispose of the bodies secretly, you don't just leave them lying around in the streets. It means it's easy for those states that don't want to take the trouble to find out what's going on to say, Burundi's right, things are calmer. But it's a refusal to actually get into what is the true situation. But it's a wonderful excuse for a state that doesn't want to be bothered. But I do find it extraordinary that once a place has crossed the threshold to get the attention of the Security Council, for them then just to say, oh, well, they didn't allow our people. I find that bizarre. I don't understand the dynamics. Specifically with regard to Jean Bigirimana, there is a section in the big report, paragraphs 3282 to 332, because in his case, on the basis of evidence that we have gathered, it is clear that at the time he was taken, he was seen in the presence of Service National de Renseignement agents and police, and so one can meaningfully call that an enforced disappearance, because it's not simply that a person disappeared. When last seen, he was in the presence of state agents. And indeed, his case is currently before the Working Group on Enforced Disappearances. They've referred it to Burundi, so Burundi is supposed to answer their questions I would emphasise supposed to. Thank you.